Welcome to Zarila HOA Stories. Drop your country or city name in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe and like this video for more wild HOA drama stories. When I first moved into Willow Creek Estates, I thought it was paradise. Perfect lawns, pastel houses, and a community that looked straight out of a real estate ad. I remember thinking, this is where I'll finally have peace and quiet. I had no idea that peace and quiet would later become a weapon. Buddy, my golden retriever, loved it here. Every morning we'd walk around the cul-de-sac, and everyone smiled at him. Everyone, that is, except Linda Prescott, our HOA president. She was the type of woman who measured grass height with a ruler. Always dressed in pastel suits, clipboard in hand, sunglasses hiding judgmental eyes. I first met her when Buddy accidentally stepped on her tulips. "Pets must remain on the path," she said sharply, without even a hello. Still, I kept things polite. Until one Friday morning, an envelope appeared on my porch with the HOA logo. Inside was a warning notice. "Excessive noise from your property has been reported. Please ensure your pet does not bark outside HOA-approved hours." HOA-approved hours? I had to laugh. Buddy rarely barked, unless the mailman or a squirrel came too close. I shrugged it off. But 2 days later, another notice arrived, this time with a fine. $150. I couldn't believe it. I decided to talk to Linda directly. When I knocked on her door, a loud squawk answered before she did. "Hello," screamed a voice from inside. Then came the cackle of a parrot. Linda appeared moments later. Percy perched on her shoulder like a pirate companion. "Sarah, we've received several complaints. The community values tranquility." "Linda," I said, trying to stay calm, "Buddy barely barks. Maybe someone's exaggerating." She tilted her head. "I have recordings," she said proudly. "Residents submit them anonymously. I'll have to bring this up at the next HOA meeting." As she closed the door, Percy screamed, "Bad dog! Bad dog!" followed by hysterical laughter. That was the first time I realized this wasn't about noise. This was personal. That night, Emily dropped by with lemonade. "You're not the first one she's done this to," she whispered. "Last year, she fined a guy for having wind chimes. And get this, her parrot screams all day, but no one complains because she's the president." I stared at her. "Wait, her parrot screams?" "Oh, constantly," Emily said. "You just don't notice until you're listening for it." And that's when the idea hit me, quietly like a spark in the dark. If Linda could record my dog, I could record her parrot. But I had no idea how deep this war of sound would go. For the next few days, I couldn't shake the sound of Linda's parrot screaming "bad dog" through her window. It echoed in my head like some twisted joke. Every time I heard Percy, I glanced down at Buddy, who wagged his tail, totally unaware that he'd just been labeled the neighborhood menace. I tried to ignore it. But when the third HOA notice arrived, this time threatening further disciplinary action, I knew I had to fight back. I walked over to Emily's place, clutching the notice. "She's saying Buddy barked between midnight and 2 a.m., I said. "He sleeps in my room. He doesn't bark at night." Emily rolled her eyes. "She's making it up. Linda's obsessed with her noise control policy. She once told me my screen door creaked too loudly. That's when I asked the question that changed everything. Do you ever hear a parrot at night?" Emily smirked. "Oh yeah, Percy's loud, especially when the Prescotts argue. He starts repeating everything. 'Stop yelling, Linda,' and then laughs like a maniac." That gave me an idea, so simple it was brilliant. If Linda could collect noise evidence against me, I'd collect my own. That evening, I searched online for a small audio recorder. I ordered one that could record up to 12 hours straight. 2 days later, it arrived, a sleek black device that fit in my palm. I felt like a spy. I waited until Saturday morning, when Linda usually left for her HOA errands. I quietly placed the recorder near my open bedroom window, facing her house. I wanted to capture Percy's greatest hits. Sure enough, an hour later, the show began. "Hello, bad dog, bad dog." Then laughter, then whistling. After a few minutes of silence, Percy started shouting random phrases like, "Pay your dues," and "no exceptions." I cover my mouth, try not to laugh. I let the recorder run all day. That evening, I played it back. The audio was crystal clear, Percy squawking nonstop for hours. At one point, I even heard Linda yelling from inside. "Percy, for heaven's sake, quiet down." By the time I finished listening, I had nearly 4 hours of noise that could wake the dead. The next HOA meeting was on Tuesday night. I knew exactly what I was going to do. When I showed up, Linda was already at the head of the table, flanked by her loyal board members, Mr. Dwyer and Mrs. Chon. She gave me a stiff smile. "Sarah, we'll discuss your ongoing pet noise issues shortly." I smiled back. "Perfect. I came prepared." She blinked. "Oh, yeah," I said, pulling out a USB drive. "I brought some recordings, too." The other homeowners in the room looked intrigued. Even George Prescott, sitting quietly in the corner, raised an eyebrow. Linda cleared her throat. "We'll hear from you after reviewing the complaints." She started playing snippets of what she called evidence, mostly faint barks that could have been any dog in the neighborhood. It was my turn. "Before we talk about Buddy," I said, plugging in my drive, "I'd like everyone to listen to what I hear every single day from the HOA president's home." As soon as I hit play, Percy's voice filled the room. "Bad dog. Pay your dues. Bad dog." People gasped. Mr. Dwyer nearly spilled his coffee. Then came Percy's high-pitched laughter, followed by Linda's voice faintly shouting, "Quiet, Percy!" The room erupted. A few neighbors couldn't hold back their laughter. George looked like he wanted to melt into his chair. Linda's face turned red. "That's completely inappropriate. Sarah, you had no right." "With respect," I interrupted, "I was simply collecting noise evidence, just like you said residents could. If we're enforcing rules equally, then Percy clearly violates them." She sputtered something about context and exceptions, but it was too late. Everyone had heard it. The Queen of Quiet had been dethroned by her own parrot. After the meeting, Emily nudged me. "That was epic," she whispered. I smiled. Round 1 goes to Buddy. But deep down, I knew Linda wouldn't let this slide. She wasn't just embarrassed. She was furious. And furious HOA presidents are the most dangerous kind. The next morning, I realized just how much I'd embarrassed Linda. The HOA Facebook group, which she normally ruled with iron moderation, was full of memes. Someone had edited a picture of her parrot wearing a tiny crown, captioned, "All hail Percy, the true voice of the HOA." By noon, Linda had deleted half the posts and written a long rant about community decorum and respect for leadership. It would have been funny if it hadn't been followed by a new notice taped to my door. Subject: Resident Conduct. Ms. Mitchell, recording HOA board members or their property constitutes harassment under Section 4B of the Willow Creek Covenant. You are hereby issued a formal warning. I stared at the letter in disbelief. She was twisting the rules now. Emily laughed when I showed her. "She's losing it. You exposed her hypocrisy, and now she's scrambling." Still, I was nervous. Linda had power, and she knew how to use it. 2 days later, an animal control truck pulled up in front of my house. Officer Daniel stepped out, clipboard in hand. "Ma'am, we got a report of a dog barking nonstop. Name's Buddy." I sighed. "Of course. Come on in." I let him inside. Buddy greeted him with a wagging tail and a single bark, soft, happy, innocent. Daniels crouched down to pet him. "He doesn't seem like a problem." "He's not," I said, "but our HOA president has decided he is." Daniels nodded knowingly. "You'd be surprised how often this happens in these neighborhoods. I'll mark this as unfounded." After he left, I caught Linda watching from her porch, arms crossed. Percy squawked behind her, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Good boy. Bad president." I nearly choked laughing. Even her parrot was turning against her. But the laughter didn't last. That evening, I got another notice, this time about unsightly yard conditions. The reason? Buddy's chew toy was left on the grass. It was clear now. She wasn't enforcing rules. She was waging war. Emily and I decided we wouldn't take it quietly. "Let's document everything," she said. "Every letter, every fine, every noise you don't make." So I started a folder, scanned copies of every complaint, every piece of evidence. I even saved a few screenshots from the HOA Facebook group before Linda deleted them. Then something strange happened. Other neighbors began quietly reaching out to me. "Linda fined me for leaving my trash cans out for 10 minutes, one said. She told me my holiday lights violated aesthetic standards, said another. It turned out almost everyone had a story, but no one dared stand up to her until now. One evening, George Prescott, the HOA president's own husband, showed up at my door. He looked nervous, glancing over his shoulder. I probably shouldn't be here, he whispered, but I wanted to apologize for what's been happening. I frowned. You don't have to apologize for her. He shook his head. No, you don't understand. Linda's obsessed. She checks cameras, listens for dogs, birds, kids, you name it. And lately, she's been talking about finding a way to get you kicked out of the HOA. My stomach tightened. Kicked out? Can she even do that? She'll try, he said grimly. She's drafting something for the next board vote. You might want to be ready. When he left, I looked at Buddy, who wagged his tail like nothing was wrong. They picked the wrong dog owner to mess with, I whispered. That night, I opened my laptop and started a new file labeled HOA Defense Plan. If Linda wanted a war, I'd give her one, but I'd fight it smarter, quieter, and with the one thing she couldn't control, the truth. After George's warning, I couldn't sleep. Every creak in the house made me think of Linda plotting her next move. She had power, influence, and a taste for control. But she didn't have something I was slowly gaining, support. Over the next week, Emily and I started quietly talking to neighbors. We didn't gossip, we compared notes. And what we found shocked everyone. Mrs. Harper had been fined for having too many garden ornaments. Tom and Rachel, a young couple, got cited because their trash bins were visible for 6 minutes after pickup. And poor Mr. Jensen, who used a wheelchair, got a violation because his ramp was not aesthetically uniform. It was worse than I thought. Linda had been terrorizing the whole community. So Emily suggested, why don't we gather everyone and show them what she's been doing? Not just to you, to all of us. I smiled. An unofficial meeting? She grinned. More like a neighborhood gathering. We planned it for Saturday evening in Emily's backyard. No HOA involvement, no agenda, just neighbors talking freely. By sunset, a dozen people showed up, all looking over their shoulders like they were sneaking into a secret club. I brought my folder full of letters, and one by one, people added theirs. I was scared to say anything, said Rachel. She said she'd raise our dues if we kept arguing. Mr. Jensen added, she told me I'd lose lawn maintenance privileges if I didn't repaint my mailbox. I physically can't do it. By the time everyone finished, we had a stack of over 30 complaints, all unfair, all from Linda. Then Emily stood up. We have two options. We can keep living like this, or we can stand up together. There was a pause. Then Mrs. Harper, who everyone thought was on Linda's side, said softly, I'm tired of being scared to plant my roses. That was the turning point. We decided to take action, not by breaking rules, but by following them better than Linda ever had. We'd call for a special election to review her presidency. According to the HOA bylaws, if 1/3 of the residents signed a petition, the board had to hold a vote. I went home that night buzzing with adrenaline. We had a plan, and for the first time since moving here, I didn't feel alone. The next morning, I started knocking on doors. Some people were hesitant. Others whispered, count me in. Within 3 days, we had over 40 signatures. That's when Linda found out. I knew because I woke up to find a fresh letter taped to my front door, written in bold capital letters. Notice of community disruption. Organizing unsanctioned gatherings and petitions violates HOA protocol. Cease and desist immediately or face further action. I laughed out loud. It was pure Linda, bossy, dramatic, and completely wrong. Emily was furious. She's bluffing. The bylaws clearly say residents can call for a review vote. I know, I said, and we're going to use her own rules against her. That evening, I made copies of every unfair fine, every overreach, and the Parrot recording. I compiled it all into a neatly labeled binder. Evidence, Willow Creek HOA abuse. Then I sent a polite but firm email to the HOA board, CCING every homeowner. As residents of Willow Creek, we are requesting a special vote to review the current HOA leadership. Please find attached evidence of ongoing misconduct, bias, and selective enforcement of rules. We look forward to a fair and transparent process. I hit send and sat back, heart racing. Within an hour, replies started pouring in. Some neighbors thanked me. A few board members panicked. And one short message from George made me smile. You just started something big. Be careful, but don't stop. I looked down at Buddy, sleeping peacefully beside me. For the first time, it felt like we might actually win this. But what I didn't know was that Linda wasn't going to fight fair, and her next move would turn the entire neighborhood against me. For a few glorious days, Willow Creek felt lighter. Neighbors smiled when they passed me. Even the gossip threads online were calmer. It was like the neighborhood had collectively exhaled after years of walking on eggshells around Linda Prescott. But peace doesn't last long when a power-hungry HOA president feels threatened. On Wednesday morning, I found not one, but 3 violation letters on my porch. The first was for leaving trash bins out overnight. The second accused me of having improper fencing. The third? Continued noise disturbance. Documented evidence attached. Attached was a USB drive. I plugged it into my laptop. Static. Then, faintly, barking, constant, loud, and angry. But it wasn't Buddy. I knew his bark. This was deeper, rougher, clearly another dog. I replayed it, frowning. It didn't even sound like it came from my yard. It was like someone had stood in the street recording any random noise. But the timestamp on the file? It matched the exact hour Buddy and I were at the vet 2 days earlier. She's faking evidence now, I muttered, fury boiling in my chest. Emily came over as soon as I told her. She listened to the audio twice, then raised an eyebrow. That's not even your dog, Sarah. It sounds like a German shepherd. I know, but if the HOA believes her, I'll be fined again, or worse. Emily leaned closer. You've been careful this whole time, right? You've kept the receipts, the proof, everything. I nodded, opening my binder of documents. Every letter, every email, every photo. If she wants to play dirty, I'm ready. That afternoon, I decided to pay a visit to Officer Daniels, the animal control officer who'd inspected Buddy before. I showed him the audio file. He listened, then frowned. Yeah, this isn't your dog. That's definitely not a retriever. I've heard enough barks in my life to know that. He handed the USB back. If she keeps sending this stuff, record everything. She's bordering on harassment now. When I returned home, something caught my eye. One of Linda's security cameras, mounted higher than before, pointing directly at my backyard. That night, I got an email from the HOA board. Due to recurring violations, the board will review your membership standing in a closed meeting this Friday. Closed meeting. No residents. No defense. Emily stormed in when she read it. That's illegal, Sarah. The bylaws say any disciplinary hearing must include the accused. I know, I said quietly, but she's counting on people not knowing that. So, I did what Linda never expected. I gathered witnesses. The next morning, I went door to door again, showing people the fake recordings, the new violations, and the photos of the camera aimed at my yard. Slowly, the tide started turning. Even the quiet neighbors, ones who never spoke up, started shaking their heads in disgust. Then came a surprise I didn't see coming. George Prescott showed up at my door again, this time looking terrified. She's losing control, Sarah, he whispered. She edited those recordings. I overheard her bragging to Mr. Dwyer that no one would believe you because you're the dog lady. Do you have proof? I asked. He hesitated. Not yet, but I can get it. She keeps all the HOA files on her laptop, emails, recordings, everything. If I can copy them before the meeting, you'll have her. I stared at him, stunned. George, are you sure? That's risky. He gave a sad smile. I've lived under her rules for 20 years. Maybe it's time someone stood up to her, even if it's me. Later that evening, as the sun set behind the perfect lawns of Willow Creek, I watched Buddy chasing fireflies and felt a mix of fear and resolve. Linda thought she could manipulate everyone, twist facts, and hide behind her title. But she'd forgotten one thing. Truth leaves a trail. Emily texted me just before bed. Friday's meeting is in the clubhouse at 6. Everyone's talking about it. You're not alone anymore. I smiled at my phone, then looked at Buddy curled up by the door. Don't worry, boy, I whispered. We're not the ones barking up the wrong tree anymore. I didn't know it yet, but that meeting would change everything. By the end of Friday night, the HOA president's perfect reputation would start to crumble. Friday arrived with the kind of tension you could feel in the air. The entire neighborhood seemed to hold its breath. People were trimming hedges, sweeping driveways, pretending everything was normal. But everyone knew what was happening that evening at the clubhouse. The closed meeting. I didn't plan to stay quiet, no matter what Linda's letter said. At 5:50 p.m., I walked up the brick path toward the clubhouse, Buddy at my side, his tail wagging as if he didn't know we were walking into enemy territory. Emily met me outside with a determined look. "Half the neighborhood's already inside," she whispered. She said it was board only, but people showed up anyway. Inside, the room buzzed with whispers. Linda sat at the front table, perfectly composed, lips painted scarlet, pearl necklace gleaming under the lights. On one side sat Mr. Dwyer, nervously shuffling papers. On the other, George, his face unreadable. When I entered, Linda's smile froze. "Ms. Mitchell," she said sharply, "this is a private meeting. You weren't invited." I met her gaze evenly. "Actually, per Section 8C of the HOA bylaws, residents are allowed to attend any disciplinary review that concerns them." A murmur rippled through the room. George glanced down, hiding a faint smile. Linda's lips tightened. "Fine. Then let's begin." She stood, holding a folder like a trophy. "We've received multiple reports of ongoing disturbances from Ms. Mitchell's property. This includes verified noise recordings and video footage showing disruptive behavior." She opened her laptop and played the same fake recording I'd already heard, the deep, unfamiliar barking. Then she clicked a video file. The footage showed my yard, except the timestamp was wrong. It was from 2 months ago, and the noise was barely audible. "This," she declared, "is clear evidence that Ms. Mitchell's dog continues to violate HOA rules." I raised my hand. "That's not my dog, and you know it." Linda shot me a glare. "Are you suggesting the board fabricated this evidence?" Before I could answer, George stood up. "Actually," he said quietly, "she's right." The entire room went still. Linda's head snapped toward him. "George," she hissed, "sit down." He didn't. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a small flash drive. "These are copies of HOA records I retrieved from Linda's computer. They show emails where she instructed Mr. Dwyer to gather or create any evidence necessary to remove Ms. Mitchell from the association." Gasps filled the room. Linda's face drained of color. You broke into my files?" George sighed. "I didn't have to. You left them open." He turned to the crowd. "She's been targeting residents for years. Random fines, fake violations, intimidation. And the worst part? She's been using HOA funds to pay for personal expenses, flowers, patio furniture, even Percy's vet bills." "What?" Mrs. Harper shouted from the back. "Our money." The room erupted. Linda slammed her folder shut. "This is a witch hunt. None of this is admissible." I stood and pulled out my binder. "Actually, it is." I walked to the front and placed it on the table. "Here's every letter, every fine, every false complaint. Plus, recordings of Percy, your parrot, making more noise in one afternoon than my dog has in a year." I pressed play. Percy's voice blared through the room. "Bad dog. Pay your dues. Bad president," followed by that unmistakable laughter. Half the neighbors burst out laughing. Mr. Dwyer looked like he wanted to disappear into his chair. When the noise died down, Emily stood. "We, the residents of Willow Creek, demand a vote of no confidence in our current HOA president. Effective immediately." Hands started to rise, one after another, row by row. Even Mr. Dwyer's shaky hand went up. Linda's eyes darted around wildly. "You can't do this. I am the HOA." George looked at her sadly. "No, Linda, you were." The vote passed overwhelmingly. In less than 10 minutes, the woman who had ruled the neighborhood with fear and fines had been stripped of her power. As I walked out, Buddy trotted beside me, tail high. The neighbors clapped and cheered softly. Emily grinned. "You did it, Sarah." I smiled back. "No, we did it." But deep inside, I knew this wasn't over. Someone like Linda didn't just give up. She plotted comebacks. And from the way she glared at me as I left that night, I knew she'd be back. For a few days, peace finally returned to Willow Creek. The HOA board announced an interim president. Emily, to everyone's delight, and neighbors began smiling again. Kids played outside. Wind chimes returned to porches, and for once, nobody was afraid to leave their trash bins out an extra hour. Linda, however, vanished. Her perfect front yard went untrimmed, blinds stayed shut, and no one saw her or George. I assumed she'd finally given up. I was wrong. It started small, a shadow of her old tactics. Anonymous flyers appeared on mailboxes calling me the troublemaker who ruined the HOA. My mailbox was stuffed with fake invoices from non-existent neighborhood cleanup fees. Then came something stranger. Every night, around midnight, Buddy would perk up and start growling softly at the fence. I peeked outside once and swore I saw movement, someone watching from the shadows. Emily was furious when I told her. "If she's stalking you, we can get a restraining order," she said. "She's not president anymore. She's just a bitter old woman with a parrot and too much free time." That line stuck with me. A parrot and too much free time. Because the very next morning, I woke up to chaos. Percy, the infamous parrot, was gone. George was the one who told me. He showed up at my door, pale and exhausted. "She's blaming you," he said weakly. "She swears you stole Percy." My jaw dropped. "What? I haven't even been near her house." "She's telling everyone you took him as revenge. She's calling animal control, the police, the board, anyone who'll listen." Sure enough, by noon, the HOA Facebook page exploded. "Sarah Mitchell kidnaps pets now," one post said. Another claimed I was a danger to community animals. I was shaking with anger. "She's framing me again." George looked miserable. "I think she's spiraling." After the vote, she started talking to Percy constantly, like he was a person. She even recorded him. Hours of him mimicking conversations. That gave me an idea. "Wait, you said she recorded him?" He nodded slowly. "Yeah, she kept everything on her old laptop." "What? If Percy talks as much as you say, maybe he recorded her too." That afternoon, with George's permission, Emily and I went to their house while Linda was out ranting at City Hall. The place was eerily quiet without the parrot. We found her laptop open on the kitchen table. I clicked through her audio files, dozens of them labeled things like Percy Chat 1.wave and Percy Mimic 2.mp3. When we played the first one, my heart skipped. Linda's voice, "Percy say bad dog." "Percy, bad dog." Linda, "Now say Sarah's dog barked all night." "Percy, Sarah's dog barked all night." Then laughter, Linda's laughter. "Perfect. That'll shut her up." Emily's eyes went wide. "Oh my God, she trained him to fake the evidence." I scrolled further. Another clip, Linda on the phone. "Don't worry, I'll make her look like a liar. I'll play Percy's voice at the meeting, and they'll believe it's her dog. No one can tell the difference." We just stared at each other. The parrot hadn't just been noisy, he'd been the secret witness. We copied every file onto a flash drive and left before Linda came home. That night, I sent the files to the entire HOA board and anonymously to the local community Facebook group. By morning, the whole neighborhood had heard the truth. Percy's recordings spread like wildfire. People couldn't believe their ears. Linda tried to deny everything, but the evidence was undeniable. Her own voice, instructing her parrot to fake barking, laughing about framing me, and mocking the neighbors she fined. The HOA board issued an official statement declaring her permanently banned from any leadership role. Word even reached the local paper, which ran a headline that made me laugh out loud. HOA president framed dog using her parrot. When George came by later, he was smiling for the first time in weeks. "You saved this place," he said quietly. "And you saved me, too." I didn't know how to stop her. I smiled, scratching Buddy behind the ears. Actually, it wasn't me. It was Percy. As if on cue, from somewhere down the street, a familiar voice squawked, "Bad president. Bad president." We both burst out laughing. Willow Creek finally had peace, and a new legend about the parrot who exposed the HOA president. By the next morning, Willow Creek wasn't just buzzing. It was exploding. Every neighbor, every social group, every text chain had one topic: Linda and her parrot. Someone had leaked the audio clips beyond our community Facebook page. They spread faster than gossip ever had before. Percy's voice mimicking "Sarah's dog barked all night" had gone viral locally. Even the news station did a lighthearted segment. A neighborhood parrot helps expose HOA corruption. When I saw the headline on TV, I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Buddy barked once, like he understood he'd been officially cleared of all wrongdoing. The next day, the HOA held an emergency meeting. Emily stood at the front, looking confident but calm. Linda, however, looked like a storm waiting to explode. Her eyes were wild, her hair unkempt, and she held Percy's empty cage like a shield. "Everyone," Emily began, "we've verified that the recordings are authentic." We heard Linda coaching her parrot to mimic barking, and even admitting to faking evidence against Sarah. This is a serious violation of our bylaws, and of the trust we placed in her as president. The murmurs in the room were sharp and judgmental. Linda slammed her hand on the table. "You all think this is funny? That bird was tampered with. Someone broke into my home and altered those recordings." Emily stayed calm. "Linda, the timestamps show they were created months ago, before Sarah ever filed a complaint. No one broke into your home. You broke everyone's trust." Her voice cracked on the last word, and I could tell even she was heartbroken by how far things had gone. Then George stood up. His voice trembled at first, but grew stronger with each word. "Linda, it's time to stop. You went too far. You framed innocent people, turned our neighborhood into a battlefield, and humiliated yourself. Please, just let it go." For a moment, Linda looked at him, really looked at him, and I thought she might finally back down. But instead, she grabbed the empty cage and shouted, "You're all fools. None of this would have happened if you just followed the rules." Then she stormed out, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. The silence that followed was thick. Emily sighed and announced that Linda was officially removed from the HOA board, banned from all meetings, and would face possible civil charges for falsifying evidence. After that, everything began to change. Neighbors started greeting me again. The once hostile stares turned into smiles. People stopped whispering when I walked by. Even kids came by to pet Buddy, calling him the hero dog. George filed for separation from Linda quietly, moving into a small rental nearby. He looked relieved, lighter somehow, as if years of control had lifted off him. "I'm sorry it took me so long to see what she really was," he told me one morning. "It's okay," I said sincerely. "She fooled everyone for a while." A few weeks later, the local animal shelter reached out to Emily. Apparently, someone had found a bright green parrot wandering near the park, yelling, "Sarah's dog didn't do it," and "Bad Linda, bad Linda." We all burst out laughing when Emily told us. It was Percy, alive and unbothered, repeating the truth in his own hilarious way. George adopted him back immediately, promising to give him a peaceful home. "He deserves better too," he said softly. From then on, Percy became a neighborhood celebrity. He'd sit on George's porch, squawking greetings like "Good neighbor," or "Nice day, isn't it?" Buddy would bark playfully in response, and somehow the two ex-rivals became friends. Emily later admitted she was considering changing the HOA's slogan from peace, order, and rules to listen before you judge. Everyone agreed it fit better. As for me, I finally got to enjoy my backyard without fear of a letter in the mail. Buddy could bark, run, and roll in the grass like he was meant to. But every once in a while, when I walked past George's house, I'd hear Percy shout from his perch, "Sarah's dog, good boy. Linda, bad president." And honestly, that was the sweetest justice of all. For a while, life in Willow Creek finally felt normal again. The lawns were green, the HOA meetings were peaceful, and no one feared receiving those dreaded violation notices. I was finally sleeping well again, and Buddy's soft snoring at night was the only sound I cared to hear. But peace, as I learned, never lasts long when Linda's involved. About 2 months after the Parrot scandal, rumors began spreading that Linda was planning something big. At first, I brushed it off. She was banned from the HOA, disgraced, and, according to George, barely left her house except for grocery runs. Then one afternoon, Emily knocked on my door, visibly tense. "Sarah," she said, "you're not going to believe this. Linda's trying to start her own homeowners group." I blinked. "You mean like another HOA?" Emily nodded grimly. "She's calling it the True Willow Creek Preservation Committee. She's going door to door claiming that our current HOA is corrupt and needs real leadership. I couldn't help laughing. Real leadership? The woman who trained a parrot to frame people. Emily smiled weakly. Yeah, but some people don't remember that part. She's manipulating the new residents who moved in recently. I felt a twinge of unease. That was classic Linda, rebuilding her image by twisting the truth. Within a week, flyers appeared taped to mailboxes again, written in the same dramatic font she always used. Tired of noise? Tired of corruption? Join the True Willow Creek Committee. New rules. New order. New peace. Her name wasn't printed anywhere, but everyone knew it was her. When I confronted her one evening as she passed out flyers, she didn't even flinch. Still spying on me, Sarah? She asked, her tone dripping with venom. You can't stop me. The truth always comes back. The truth, I said sharply. You mean the truth your parrot exposed? Her smile faltered for a split second before she turned and walked away. By the end of that week, she'd gathered a small group, about 6 homeowners, mostly new families who didn't know her history. They started holding alternative meetings at her house, claiming the current HOA was illegitimate. Emily was furious but calm. We'll let her hang herself with her own rope, she told me. We're documenting everything. Then, one evening, everything came to a head. I was walking Buddy when I noticed flashing lights near Linda's house. Police cars. A small crowd gathered, whispering. I hurried closer and found George standing by the sidewalk, looking exhausted but relieved. What happened? I asked. She called the police, he sighed. Said the HOA was harassing her. But when they showed up, they heard her yelling about secret conspiracies and, well, Percy. Percy. I frowned. George nodded. She had him in the yard, trying to make him repeat some nonsense about Emily and bribes. But Percy wouldn't cooperate. He just kept yelling, bad Linda, over and over. I had to bite my lip to stop from laughing. The officers clearly didn't find her story credible. After a tense half hour, they escorted her back inside and warned her to stop contacting neighbors or she could face harassment charges. The next morning, the True Willow Creek Committee website vanished. The flyers stopped appearing. Linda's curtains closed again. For the first time, I didn't feel angry at her. I just felt sorry. Emily later told me quietly, the city's considering requiring a mental health evaluation before reinstating her any community rights. She's not well, Sarah. You won, but this might have broken her. That night, I sat on my porch, watching Buddy chase fireflies in the dark. Percy's voice echoed faintly from George's house. Good dog. No bark. Linda bad. I smiled to myself. It felt like closure. But a small part of me couldn't shake the feeling that this story wasn't completely over. Because the next morning, I found something strange taped to my mailbox. A small white envelope. Inside was a handwritten note. You may have silenced me, but you'll never silence the truth. L. And under it, a single green feather. I stared at it for a long time, my heart pounding. Was it a warning, or just another one of her games? Either way, I knew one thing for sure. Linda wasn't done yet. The green feather haunted me all night. It wasn't just the color. It was the fact that it looked fresh, as if it had been plucked that same day. But Percy was safe at George's place. So where did it come from? By morning, curiosity outweighed fear. I walked to George's house, feather in hand. Did Percy lose this? I asked as soon as he opened the door. George frowned. No, he hasn't molted in months. Why? I handed him the note. His face paled as he read Linda's scrawled message. You may have silenced me, but you'll never silence the truth. He sighed heavily. She must have left that. I thought she'd finally stopped after last night's police visit. George, if she's sneaking around leaving things on my property, that's harassment, I said firmly. We need to tell Emily. He agreed, and we walked together to Emily's house. She read the note twice, then looked up with narrowed eyes. She's escalating again. I'll call Officer Daniels. He handled her last complaint. We'll file a report. But that evening, before the police even arrived, something else happened. I was in my living room when my phone buzzed. An unknown number. The text read, You think you're safe? Check your inbox. The truth will bark louder this time. A chill ran down my spine. I opened my email and gasped. There was a single video attachment labeled Buddy's Proof.mp4. When I hit play, grainy footage appeared, my backyard recorded at night. It showed Buddy standing by the fence, barking at something unseen. The sound looped endlessly, like proof he was disturbing the peace. But I knew my own yard. The shadows weren't right. The trees were different. It wasn't my yard. It was Linda's old footage, doctored to look like mine. Unbelievable, I muttered. She's trying again. I forwarded the video to Emily and George immediately. Within minutes, they were at my door. Emily held her laptop open. Look, she said. The video metadata says it was created 3 days ago on Linda's computer. She's fabricating evidence again, Sarah. George rubbed his temples. She must have broken into my old files. When we separated, I left her the desktop I use for HOA documents. Maybe she used that to access the archive. Emily nodded grimly. This is it. She's crossed the line for the last time. We called Officer Daniels. He came by that night, reviewed the messages, the note, and the feather. His face hardened. She's violating the restraining order we placed on her communications. I'll issue a formal warning tonight, and if she contacts you again, even once, she's getting charged. I finally exhaled. Maybe this nightmare would end. But Linda wasn't done yet. The next morning, the entire neighborhood woke up to chaos. Someone had slipped printed copies of that fake video screenshots under every door, each captioned, "Proof the HOA protects noisy rule breakers." People gathered outside, confused and whispering. A few newcomers even started questioning if I had faked my innocence before. That's when Emily snapped into action. She held an emergency town meeting on the community lawn. Standing tall with her laptop, she projected the original recording metadata for everyone to see. This, she said, pointing to the screen, was edited and created by Linda Peterson 3 days ago. She is no longer a resident in good standing and has been legally warned by the police. The crowd fell silent. Then, one by one, neighbors started speaking up. She's gone too far. She needs help. She's lost it completely. Even the families who joined her committee walked away that day. George arrived last, holding a small cage, Percy's cage. Inside, the parrot tilted his head as if sensing the tension. Then, right when everyone was watching, Percy squawked loudly. "Bad video. Linda lie. Bad Linda." The crowd burst out laughing. The tension broke instantly. It was poetic. The very parrot she once used to destroy reputations, now exposing her one final time. Officer Daniels arrived moments later to inform us that Linda had been detained earlier that morning after trying to break into the old HOA office to recover her evidence. She was being held for evaluation and would face charges for harassment and falsifying digital media. It was finally over. Emily sighed in relief. "This neighborhood owes you a lot. Sarah, you could have left, but you stood your ground." I looked down at Buddy, who wagged his tail proudly. We both did. George smiled softly. And to think it all started because of a barking dog and a talking parrot. As the crowd dispersed, Percy flapped his wings and shouted one last time into the golden sunset. "Good dog. Truth wins. Bad president gone." The laughter that followed echoed across Willow Creek, a sound that finally replaced all the barking and shouting from months before. The following weeks at Willow Creek felt strangely peaceful, almost too quiet. For the first time in a long while, there were no arguments at meetings, no suspicious notes, and no tense whispers on the sidewalks. The air felt lighter. But beneath the calm, there was a sense of waiting to see what would happen to Linda Peterson, the former HOA president turned neighborhood menace. Emily kept the community informed. "She's facing multiple charges," she told me over coffee one morning. "Harassment, falsifying digital evidence, and violating a restraining order. The court ordered a psychological evaluation first." I nodded quietly. She needs help, not hate. But she also needs to be held accountable. A few days later, George stopped by. He looked better than I'd ever seen him, his posture straight, eyes calm. He handed me a manila envelope. "These are the HOA's old files," he said. "I found them when cleaning up her storage shed." She kept everything. Meeting notes, fines, secret recordings of board members, even emails she never sent. I raised an eyebrow. Emails. He nodded. Drafts of fake complaints. She was planning to frame other residents too, not just you. That revelation hit me hard. All those years, she'd been quietly building a web of control, one false accusation at a time. We decided to give everything to Officer Daniels, who was already gathering evidence for her case. This will make things easier, he said. It proves a pattern. The judge won't take this lightly. When the court date finally came, the entire neighborhood buzzed. A few of us attended quietly, sitting near the back of the small courtroom. Linda looked different. The sharpness in her eyes was gone, replaced by exhaustion. She wore a plain gray suit and avoided looking at anyone. Percy's recordings were played again, not for laughter this time, but as official evidence. When the judge asked if she had anything to say, she finally spoke, her voice trembling. "I just wanted order," she said. "People broke the rules. No one listened, so I made them listen." The judge sighed. "You crossed the line, Ms. Peterson. Order without fairness is just control. And control without compassion destroys communities." Linda was sentenced to mandatory therapy, community service, and a permanent ban from all HOA positions within the state. No jail, but a long, public reckoning. Outside the courtroom, George stood quietly beside me. "I still care about her," he admitted softly. "But maybe this will help her finally find peace." I nodded. Maybe it will. When we returned to Willow Creek, the atmosphere had changed completely. Neighbors came together like never before, organizing community picnics, pet adoption drives, and family movie nights on the green. It was as if everyone wanted to erase the bitterness Linda had planted. Emily proposed a new initiative called Voices of the Creek, a monthly open forum where residents could speak freely without fear of judgment. "No more behind-the-scenes fines," she said. "If there's a problem, we talk it out." The first meeting was a success. People laughed, shared stories, and even offered ideas to improve the neighborhood. It felt alive again. Buddy became somewhat of a local mascot. Kids would shout his name whenever they passed our house. Even Percy became a star. Emily had him speak at the first community picnic, where he squawked proudly into a microphone. "Good neighbors. No bad rules." The crowd roared with laughter and applause. As the sun set that evening, George stood beside me, holding Percy's cage while Buddy wagged his tail nearby. "You know," he said with a small smile, "if someone told me a dog and a parrot would save this community, I'd have laughed them out of the room." I grinned. "Well, sometimes the truth has feathers and fur." He chuckled, shaking his head. "I'm just glad we made it through." For the first time, the sound of laughter filled the air instead of barking or shouting. The neighborhood had healed. But as I sat on my porch later that night, watching the lights flicker across perfect lawns and tidy streets, I couldn't help but think back to the note Linda had left me. "You'll never silence the truth." Maybe she was right, because in the end, the truth didn't need silencing. It just needed to be heard. Months passed, and Willow Creek transformed from neighborhood filled with fear and fines to a place full of laughter and life. The lawns still looked perfect, but now they weren't maintained out of fear. They were cared for out of pride. Emily continued as HOA president, though she liked to joke that the H now stood for harmony. The meetings that used to last for hours of arguing now ended with potlucks and jokes. Buddy became a local celebrity. Everyone knew the story, the dog accused of barking too much, who ended up exposing the president's lies. I couldn't walk him without someone calling out, "Hey, that's the hero dog." As for me, I found peace again. No more letters, no more paranoia. My mornings began with Buddy chasing squirrels and ended with quiet sunsets on the porch. One afternoon, I heard a knock on my door. When I opened it, George stood there with Percy perched on his shoulder. The parrot tilted his head, blinked twice, and said, "Good neighbor, good dog, no bad rules." I burst out laughing. "He's still saying that?" George grinned. "Every day. It's his favorite phrase now." We sat on the porch while Buddy lay at my feet. George told me that Linda was doing better. Her therapy had helped her face her obsession with control. She'd even sent him a short letter of apology. "She asked me to tell you something," he said, his tone softer now. "She said, tell Sarah I was wrong. The dog wasn't the problem. I was." For a long moment, I said nothing. I just looked out at the horizon, where the last light of day turned the neighborhood gold. Maybe we all learned something from her, I finally said. Rules matter, but kindness matters more. George nodded. Exactly. Later that evening, the HOA held a small celebration called the Day of Harmony, marking the anniversary of the day Linda was removed from office. It wasn't meant to mock her. It was a way to celebrate change. Families brought food, kids played games, and even Percy had his own perch near the snack table. When Emily handed me the microphone to say a few words, I hesitated at first. I'd never been much of a public speaker, but the crowd's warmth gave me courage. I used to think this neighborhood was broken, I began. But it wasn't. It just forgot how to listen. We all got so caught up in rules and perfection that we forgot what makes a community. People. Laughter. Forgiveness. Buddy barked once, perfectly timed, and everyone laughed. And if a barking dog and a talking parrot can teach us that, I said with a smile, then maybe we're all a little wiser now. The applause was loud and genuine. Emily wiped away a tear, George smiled proudly, and even Percy flapped his wings and shouted, "Good dog, good people." It was a perfect ending. That night, as the music faded and people drifted home, I sat on my porch with Buddy curled beside me. The crickets sang softly in the distance, and the air was calm. No shouting, no chaos, just peace. I thought back to everything that had happened, the false accusations, the recordings, the late-night fear, and finally, the truth. It was strange how one simple act, recording a parrot, had changed so many lives. Now, Willow Creek stood as proof that no matter how loud lies bark, the truth will always find its voice. Buddy lifted his head, as if sensing my thoughts, and gave a soft, content bark. From somewhere down the street, Percy echoed faintly, "Good dog. Truth wins." I laughed. "You're right, Percy. It sure does." The lights around the neighborhood shimmered like tiny stars, and I realized that maybe, just maybe, this was what home was supposed to feel like. Peaceful, honest, and free. Thank you for watching Zarela HOA Stories. If you enjoyed, they said my dog barked too much, so I recorded the president's parrot. Make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss another wild HOA story filled with drama, revenge, and justice. Drop a comment below. Tell us your city or country and what you thought of this crazy story. House with Garden Speech Balloon. See you in the next one.